Hey, hello everybody.
Now, here we are again. This is our fifth show. It's come around quick, hasn't it?
Yeah, like a bad penny, we keep turning up.
Oh, or a gold coin.
A gold
That'd be
coin, yeah.
nicer. Yeah.
Uh,
So, this show, we are going to talk about the enigma of consciousness, where science meets spirituality. So, essentially, the mysteries of consciousness. And let's just tell our listeners who's who here. And just need to make sure that we are streaming. Apparently, we are. Um, so let's go. So I'm Dr. Toni Riley, past
and
life
I'm
and
Dr.
reincarnation specialist. Yes.
Tony. Where are you coming to us for this week?
Okay.
From
So
where?
this week I'm in North Queensland. I think I was last week as well. I'm at my son's house, and so Queensland, Mackay specifically. Where are you coming from?
As always, Huntington Beach, California.
Yeah. And Bruce, Dr. Bruce, you've been a hypnotherapist to the stars sometimes for more
Yes,
than 50 years.
I'm only about 30 miles from Hollywood, so um,
Yeah.
you get a lot of them here.
Yeah. And you also obviously you've had a lot of experience, and I have also been delving into these arenas with clients and students for 20 years.
Mhm.
So we have a bit of collective experience amongst us. A little two different styles. Mine's a bit more um, spiritual, and yours is more clinical, would you say?
I would say more clinical, yes.
Yeah. So we've got two different perspectives on some things and a lot of the same perspective on a lot of things. So this is where we can end up with some exciting conversation together. And
Mine's more science-based, as you'll see tonight as I go through what I have planned for you folks out there.
yeah, and mine's definitely more intuitive based. So I'm excited to hear what you've got to say tonight, and we will. I'm planning to jump in when you're chatting if I'd like to,
Absolutely.
say my
So
two bobs worth.
yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
It feel
So
feel whenever the spirit moves.
exactly.
Talking about spirit.
Now, if we could ask our listeners, please go ahead and post your name and tell us where you're from in the comments. And soon we're going to get started with Dr. Bruce's excerpt on our topic tonight, which is the enigma of consciousness, where science meets spirituality. Um, Dr. Bruce, is this an excerpt from your book, Your Journey Was Never Meant to End?
No, it is not. It has nothing to do with my book. What
Okay.
this is a module. It is a module from my upcoming from my upcoming past life regression book certification training. So I've
Right.
been creating that, and this is one of the modules I created that will be taught
Okay.
in
Very good.
a little more depth during that, because of course we'll have more time.
Okay. Good. That's an exciting thing. So we've got hi Matt from Tasmania, Sharon from Gympie, and Sandra from Sydney. Ooh, all the Aussies so far. That's
Yeah.
good. Good to see you. Good to have you here. Um, should have a bit of an exciting show. Um, what what we're going to do is once Dr. Bruce starts in a moment sharing his knowledge, wisdom. If you have any comments, please put them in the chat, and or if you have questions, put them in the chat, and we will come back to them after that. So more towards the end of the show, so that we can interact with you and answer your questions. But don't be afraid to pop them in at any moment that
Great
you
book.
feel like it. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to send the microphone over to you, Dr. Bruce. Take it away.
Tony. So, what I would like to do for the next few minutes, I want to examine various perspectives of consciousness and consider theories that might allow us to unravel this enigmatic essence, I call it, and show its relationship to things like death, the afterlife, and what might lie beyond the afterlife, namely, for our purposes here, reincarnation. And also, I want to suggest how reincarnation may work on a practical and a fundamental level. Now, this, what you're about to hear here now, is a vastly abridged version of a module which is part of my upcoming online on-demand board certification past life regression and therapy training program. And I feel very strongly that A, if you're going to be a professional who's going to offer your services in this field, that there are certain things you should know about this, and B, this is one of them. Now, I'm not aware of any other past life trainers who are teaching this, by the way. So here goes, and I have been assiduously and viciously slashing this, even up to airtime. So I'm paring it down to the bare minimum. So consciousness, start with consciousness. Consciousness can be broadly defined as the awareness or subjective experience of being aware. So in a fundamental way, consciousness is being aware of being aware. But it also encompasses our thoughts, sensations, emotions, perceptions. Also, there are a number of different theories about the nature and the origin of consciousness. And these theories sometimes overlap and they intertwine, but they generally fall into two opposing camps. You might have heard this before, local and non-local. Local consciousness is often associated with mainstream scientific perspectives, and it posits that consciousness is an emergent property of the brain and is localized within specific neural structures. So, according to local consciousness theories, consciousness arises solely due to the complex interactions between neurons, synaptic connections, and cognitive processes. Consciousness doesn't survive the death of the body in this theory. As the brain's processes cease, energy dissipates without being conserved. So, in short, when it's over, it's over. Goodbye, farewell, hasta la vista, baby, and no, I'll be back. Apologies to Arnold there. So, from this perspective,
I'm sorry, Dr. Bruce.
Go ahead.
Can I butt in there? So the way that I'm hearing what you're saying here is you're seeing consciousness in this regard as the personality, the character, the spirit that someone takes on while they're here, reincarnated or incarnated?
Yeah, when it's gone, it's gone. This is the theory of local consciousness. That local consciousness is tied solely to the brain.
Okay.
So, see, from that perspective, consciousness is tied to the physical body and the brain, and it can't exist independently. Like I said, in short, when the brain dies, consciousness dies. Okay. Now, let's counter that with non-local consciousness. That's the other theory. This theorizes that consciousness isn't solely dependent on the brain or localized neural activity, but it's a universal and interconnected phenomenon, and it permeates all existence. So in this theory, it transcends individual brains. It exists as a separate entity from the physical body, and it can exist beyond the physical body. So that holds that consciousness is a fundamental aspect of the universe and is present in all matter. It's immortal, it's transcendental, it continues on after death. So serious clinical study of this is underway by many noted practitioners or researchers in the field. Some of these are affiliated with some really prestigious institutions. We've got Dr. Peter Fenwick, who's a British neuropsychiatrist, neurophysiologist. He's known for his studies of end-of-life phenomena. Fenwick, and some of you might have heard of Dr. Fenwick, he was initially highly skeptical of NDEs and related phenomena. He thought of it all as hogwash. But now he believes his research suggests that consciousness persists after death. And a matter of fact, he believes that consciousness actually exists independently outside of the brain as an inherent property of the universe, just like dark matter. Might have heard that, dark energy or gravity. I'm sure you've heard of gravity. And in Fenwick's view, the brain doesn't create or produce consciousness. It filters it. It perceives only a tiny part of the universe's intrinsic consciousness. To explain his theory, to the layman. So he uses these analogies. And this is interesting, the way he puts this. See, the eye can see only the wavelengths of electromagnetic energy that correspond to visible light, right? But the entire electromagnetic spectrum is vast. It extends from extremely low energy, low wavelength radio waves to incredibly energetic, what we call ultra short wavelength gamma rays. So while we can't actually see much of the EM spectrum, we know that it exists. We know things like X rays, infrared radiation, microwaves exist. Of course, we have instruments for detecting and measuring them. Okay, in the same way, our ears. Think about it. Our ears can register only a narrow range of sonic frequencies, but we know a large number of others imperceptible to the human ear also exist. If you don't believe me, ask your dog. When the brain dies, the electromagnetic spectrum does not vanish or cease to be. It's just that the eye is no longer viable and it can no longer filter. It can't be stimulated by, it can't react to light energy. But the energy it used to interact with remains nonetheless. Likewise, when the ear dies, or it stops what's called transducing sound waves, the energies that the living ear normally responds to still exists. So according to Fenwick, it's the same with consciousness. Just because the organ that filters, perceives, and interprets it dies, namely the brain, is what we're talking about, doesn't mean that the phenomena itself ceases to exist. See, it only ceases to exist in the now dead brain, but it continues to exist independently of the brain as an external property of the universe itself. So, according to Fenwick, when we die, we merge with the universe's entire and unified property of consciousness. So, I guess that lends new, if you think about it, that lends new meaning to the familiar phrase, one with the universe. Okay, let me
Mm.
hold there. What do you think on that one, Tony? What's your view?
Yeah, yeah, I like it. I like what I'm hearing. It's I've got to admit the science for me is a bit it's a lot. Just but I know that a lot of people really enjoy to know that the in-depth way that our eyes and ears work. But for me, the general consensus that we are at one with the universe and we incarnate here with our human sensory system, perfect. Now I let
Yeah,
you get back to it.
and this gives new meaning to one with the universe, because
Yeah,
the consciousness disperses to the universe, so it becomes one with the universe.
yeah.
Now let's move on to a couple of other really neat people. They are the most forward-thinking and I have to say controversial researchers in this study of human consciousness. So we have Dr. Stuart Hameroff, who is an American anesthesiologist and a professor at the University of Arizona. He's also director for the Center for Consciousness Studies. And we also have Sir Roger Penrose. And Sir Roger is a British mathematician, mathematical physicist, and he's regarded as one of the greatest living physicists, mathematicians, and scientists. So work done by them separately and together have led them to theorize that on the death of the body, the quantum information that inhabits the nervous system leaves the body and dissipates into the universe. You mentioned that before. And that's a view that's consistent with Newton's first law of thermodynamics, the law of conservation of energy. And that states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but can only be transferred from one form or state to another. So, in the context of consciousness and its survival, this principle implies that the energy associated with consciousness would also abide by this law and be dispersed to the universe at large in a non cohesive form. Okay? In other words, so the soul might not go out there in one cohesive entity. The individual energy of the consciousness ceases to exist as a cohesive form. Uh, what, in other words, that's what particularly makes you, and me. And it scatters to the, let's call it the universal winds. Just like, remember when you're a kid and you took a dandelion and you blew on the dandelion and everything scattered to the winds? That's where this theory is going. So when you look at Amarov and Saraja, consciousness resides, now this is interesting, in what they call the microtubules of the brain cells. And these are protein polymers inside brain neurons, which both govern neuronal and synaptic function. And it actually connects brain processes. So they theorize that these microtubules are the primary sites of quantum processing. So when you die, this information is released from the body. That means that the consciousness goes with it, goes out of the microtubules. They argue that our experience of consciousness is the result of quantum gravity effects in these microtubules. A theory which they call, let's get this, objective reduction. That's a mouthful. Orchestrated objective reduction. Concentrate consciousness, or at least let's call it proto-consciousness, is theorized by them to be a fundamental property of the universe. And it was present even at the first moment of the universe, during the Big Bang, as 14 billion years ago. So our souls, according to them, are in fact constructed from the very fabric of the universe. Might have existed since the beginning of time. Our brains are just receivers and amplifiers for this proto-consciousness, which is intrinsic to the fabric of space-time. Let me explain it this way. Let's say the heart stops beating, the blood stops flowing, microtubules lose their quantum state. The quantum information within the microtubules isn't destroyed, can't be destroyed, because it's energy. Its information is energy. It just distributes and dissipates to the universe at large. If the patient is resuscitated, this quantum information can go back into the microtubules, and the patient says, "Hey, I'm here again. I'm back. I had a near-death experience. I didn't die." If they're not revived and the patient dies, though, it's possible that this quantum information, again, energy, can exist outside the body, maybe indefinitely, as what? A soul is what we would call it. So the
Yeah.
energy of your consciousness potentially gets recycled back into a different body at some point. And in the meantime, before that happens, it exists outside of the physical body on some other level of reality. So anything to say about these two guys, Hameroff and Penrose, the
Well,
microtubules?
okay. Well, no. All I have to say is thank you to them for for proving consciousness for the for the for the logical folk who need that.
Yeah, we do. We
Yeah.
do. But from a mechanistic point of view,
Mm.
how can that all happen? Now, here's
Mm.
an explanation. This comes from somebody you guys might have heard of, Dr. Jim Tucker. He
Oh
wrote
yeah.
Return to Life. He's the guy who took over from Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia, right?
Yeah.
His explanation may be a bit mind-boggling, but when you think about it, it's really far from outlandish. He believes the answers might be found within the foundations of quantum physics, which were pioneered by people like Max Planck and a guy by the name of Albert Einstein. So scientists have long known that matter, okay, like electrons and protons, produce events only when observed. Now think about that. Only when observed. So what do we mean? In a real world example, and this has been done, when light is shined through a screen with two slits cut in behind the screen, a photographic plate records the light. When the light is unobserved as it travels in real time, when nobody's watching, right? It's just they're taking a picture with whatever cameras they use. The plate will show that it goes through both slits. But what happens when the light is observed? Does anybody know out there? The plate shows the particles go through just one of the slits. So the light's behavior changes, and the only difference is that it's being observed. And then there's a famous concept that was first proposed in 1935 in the form of a thought experiment. And it's sometimes described as a paradox. And you guys might have heard about it. Developed by an Austrian physicist named Erwin Schrödinger, and known as Schrödinger's cat. Now, in that experiment, a cat is locked in a box with a poison gas capsule. Capsule either breaks or it doesn't break. Either result is caused by the random behavior of a decaying radiation source. Now, don't worry, no cats were harmed in this experiment. This is purely a hypothetical exercise. So, according to some views of quantum physics, Schrödinger's cat is neither dead nor alive. See, its fate is not determined, it is not known until the moment the box is opened and an observer actually sees the little kitty. See, only then do the probability waves collapse and one state or other, life or death, becomes real. But wait, hold on. As Alex said in her book, in the book Alice in Wonderland, it gets curiouser and curiouser. Again, using Schrodinger's poor little tabby as an example, according to some views of quantum physics, whenever the universe reaches a decision point in which two outcomes are equally probable, the universe splits so that both outcomes have equal existence. So in one universe, the little kitty continues to live, and the other is dead. So we enter the fascinating realm of the alternate or parallel universes, and that'll be also a topic for, I believe we're going to discuss that in a separate show, aren't we?
Separate show for parallel lives. Yeah.
Now, they'll just basically give it some honorable mention here. There's plenty of debate on what that might mean, but Jim Tucker, like Max Planck, who's the father of quantum physics, believes that his discovery shows that the physical world is affected by, even derived from, the non-physical. In other words, consciousness. So if that's true, think about it. Then according to Tucker, consciousness doesn't even require a brain to exist. And there's no reason to think that consciousness would end with it. In this paradigm, consciousness might actually be separate from the brain, exist apart from our physical bodies. So he argues that since the act of observation, remember that observation collapses wave equations, the self may not be merely a byproduct of the brain. But they see it now as a separate entity that impinges, that affects matter. He believes that the brain might, in fact, simply be a conduit for consciousness to inhabit our bodies, but is transient through time and space. So in other words, the brain isn't the creator of consciousness. It's an organ or an instrument used by the soul to allow it to navigate in the physical environment. And isn't that what you've said before, Toni? Isn't that what you've said? You might not have used those particular words of consciousness. You've said it's the soul.
Well, the soul takes on the form of the spirit, which is our personality,
Right.
Our brain, the person that we come into this body to be.
And inhabits the body. Why?
To have the human experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, to experience touch, taste, sound, and emotion.
That's the way you so eloquently put it.
Yeah.
So he uses this analogy, a television set. He uses the analogy of a television set and a transmission signal. A television is required to decode the signal, but the television doesn't create the signal. In a similar way, the brain might be required for consciousness to express itself, but it might not be the source of consciousness. And Tucker also says it's conceivable that in some way consciousness could be expressed in a new life. In other words, reincarnation. Now, here's a very interesting fellow, very interesting chap. Dr. Robert Lanza. He's a medical doctor and a scientist who was voted the third most important scientist alive by the New York Times. And what he says seems to echo Tucker's theories. Now, Lanza is a medical doctor. He became involved with physics, quantum mechanics, astrophysics, and his studies of these topics led to his theories of biocentrism, which teaches that life and consciousness are fundamental to the universe. Biocentrism says that current theories of the physical world don't work. It can never be made to work until they finally account for life and consciousness. So it's consciousness that creates, now get this, okay, think about this. It's consciousness that creates the material universe, not the other way around, as the conventional view. And so remember Schrodinger's cat? In his book, one of his books, Biocentrism, How Life and Consciousness Are the Keys to Understanding the Nature of the Universe, Lanza points to the structure of the universe itself. He says that the laws, forces, and constants of the universe appear to be fine-tuned for life. So, and that implies that intelligence existed prior to the existence of matter. Think about that statement. Intelligence existed prior to the existence of matter, because that's a pretty heady thought. If matter was created at the time of the Big Bang, which 14 billion years ago, And if, as Lanza claims, intelligence or proto consciousness, let's use those words, existed even before that, the Big Bang, then what was that intelligence or proto consciousness? What was it? Now, some might call it God, some might call it the Creator. So it sounds to me that what Lanza is saying is God, a proto consciousness, quote unquote, created the material universe. So where have we heard that before?
Yeah.
We'll call
Yeah.
Genesis, right?
Yeah.
So Lanza also believes that multiple universes can exist simultaneously. Once Now, multiple universes were once the domain of science fiction writers, but this very controversial theory is supported by a number of well-known scientists. And let me tell you that. Now, a lot of you folks out there know that most of your major cities in the world have their own planetariums. Where I'm from, in New York City has the famous Hayden Planetarium. Here we have an LA Griffith Observatory. And I just saw this a bit of a news release about 3 days ago. I forget what the name of it, but Adler Planetarium in Chicago. You know how they each feature every couple of months they'll feature something new, some new theme. Their theme of their newest one, the multiverse, multiple universes. So here we have scientists actually taking this seriously and talking about multiple universes. And these are physicists and astrophysicists who tend to agree with the existence of parallel worlds. And they suggest the possibility of multi-universes.
Yeah.
Actually, the term is multiverse, which is a contraction of the words multiple and universe.
Yeah.
And that is a scientific concept which is starting to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Because they point out there's no physical laws which exist which would prohibit the existence of parallel worlds. So actually, the multiverse potentially posits that at any given moment, the universe divides into countless similar versions, and the next moment, these newborn universes split in a similar way. So, in one universe, you folks out there might be watching this show with Toni and I babbling on here, but in another one, you might be reading a book. In another universe, you might be walking your dog. So the triggering factor for these multiplying worlds is our actions. If we make some choices, one universe instantly splits into two with different versions or outcomes. Okay, so Toni,
Oh, I
what do
was going to say, whoa, whoa, whoa. But
you,
this is all, but I guess this is all
I'm
pointing to
giving
the
her a headache.
parallel universes and all of that. It's a lot. It's a lot, I think, for it adds depth to what we're talking about with reincarnation, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
it's very plausible, I'm certain.
Okay, so somebody
But
says that, wow, Dr. Bruce, you have lost me. Okay, let's see if we can find you again by bringing this all together.
Mhm.
What did this all have to do with reincarnation, the soul, life after death? Okay. Well, according to the multiverse theory, in one universe, the body can be dead, while in another, it continues to exist. It absorbs consciousness, which migrated into that universe. This means that a dead person, while traveling through that same tunnel that we talk about, going toward the light, doesn't end up in hell, doesn't end up in heaven, but in a world similar to the one he or she once inhabited. But now they're alive, and so on, ad infinitum. But we just happen to call it reincarnation. That's the term we give it. So there is an abundance of places or other universes where our soul could migrate after death, according to the theory of biocentrism. And then, now this kind of wraps it all up into a not so neat little package. I'm sorry. Then there are the theories of quantum entanglement and string theory. And that has captivated scientific community because they offer fascinating insights to the nature of the universe and potential interconnectedness of all things. Again, all is one. Quantum entanglement actually it isn't as new as you might think it is. It's getting serious play in news these days, but it was actually first proposed back in 1935 by several physicists, and one of them was Albert Einstein. And that refers to the phenomenon where two or more particles become deeply connected, regardless of the distance between them. Now, they've done experiments which have proven that entanglement is very real and fundamental to nature. It's been tested experimentally hundreds of times at laboratories all around the world. It confirms that quantum entanglement is real. So, what does that mean? In this state of entanglement, the properties of one particle become inherently linked to the properties of the other. And that leads to instantaneous correlations, even when they're separated by vast distances. And by vast distances, I mean light years, light years. The entangled particles seem to communicate faster than the speed of light. How is that possible? We've been told that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. Well, apparently something can, and it's not just Captain Kirk. So now let's delve into the string theory, because this relates to that too. According to this theory, particles aren't what we see, but they're actually little tiny strings vibrating at different frequencies. These vibrating strings give rise to various particles and forces that we observe in the universe. The string theory proposes the existence of also additional dimensions beyond the familiar three spatial dimensions that we're used to living in, 3D. Now, at first glance, you look at it and you scratch your head, say, it doesn't appear that quantum entanglement and string theory have a direct connection to reincarnation. But actually, it does. Imagine, if you will, consciousness as a type of informational pattern that is entangled with the universe. Consciousness, whether it would be a universal consciousness or our own individual consciousness, is entangled with the universe. The connectedness and the non-locality observed in quantum entanglement could suggest that consciousness isn't strictly bound by space and time. Instead, it's part of a larger interconnected web that transcends physical boundaries. In this view, the entanglement of consciousness could offer us a potential mechanism for the continuation or transfer between different bodies or incarnations. So this is where I'm all leading with this. If we consider string theory's additional dimensions as realms beyond our conventional understanding, they might provide pathways or channels through which consciousness could travel or transition between different states of existence. These dimensions could host different realities or realms. Again, when we talked about parallel realities or parallel realms, where consciousness intertwines, including the possibility of reincarnation. Of course, this all begs the question of what or who determines this transfer of consciousness? Who's the universal traffic cop here? Why did my consciousness go into my body or fetus, as the current theory suggests, instead of Tony's or yours, whoever else is out there? Who was that cosmic traffic cop who made that decision and said, you go here, you go there, you go there, you go there, and sent us on our merry way? Or did we, meaning our consciousness or our soul, make that determination during the period between lives?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there something else at play here?
Mm.
Now, one answer may lie in something called the phenomenon of spontaneous self-organization. All things in our universe are constantly in motion, vibrating, right? String theory. Even objects that appear to be stationary. This is vibrating. This bottle of water, oscillating, resonating at various frequencies. Resonance is a type of motion. It's characterized by oscillation between two states. And ultimately, all matter, the cell phone, this water bottle, are just vibrations of various underlying fields. At every scale, all nature vibrates. Something interesting when different vibrating things come together. In a type of quantum entanglement, remember we talked about that? They will often start, after a little while, to vibrate together at the same frequency. In other words, they sync up, sometimes in ways that can seem mysterious. And sometimes the sync up can be light years apart. One theory, which has been offered, is that there exists certain vibrational compatibilities, rather, vibrational compatibilities or sympathetic matches that our soul or our consciousness are drawn to when we're in this discarnate or disembodied state between lives, with a variety of factors involved here. Maybe past relationships with members of our soul group, genetics, resonance with certain times, certain places, maybe even genetics. Now, this certainly lends a new significance to that Italian word, simpatico. So, with this theory, we are the traffic cops. I think it's safe to say that the nature of consciousness and with it reincarnation remains a grand mystery, and it invites continual inquiry, exploration, and awe. Our understanding of the brain, subjective experience, intertwining of philosophy and science, as it deepens, maybe we're inching closer to comprehending this phenomena. Who knows? Maybe in
Wow.
our yeah, maybe in our lifetime, like Einstein's unified theory of relativity, we'll see a grand unified theory of reincarnation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't count that happening anytime soon.
I feel like I just had this conversation with my son yesterday
What
because
did you?
he's very logical and always studying. He's studying just absolutely everything, philosophy, theology, and science. And he also has not had a transcendent experience. So he was um, having a bit of a, we were going backwards and forwards about what his beliefs are, or his assumptions, or yes, what he believes from everything that he's read from these, what the scientists put out there and everything. But to me, what transcends it all, trumps it all, is if you have a transcendent experience, you go home to the soul energy, which is everything but nothing.
Yeah.
That's when, I guess that's when maybe it gets, well, it doesn't feel confusing there at all. But then it makes you realize, wow, there's a lot of work going on here that's that's really actually simple. If you pop off, I'd be really interested to know which of these scientists, if any, the really renowned ones, if they've had certain transcendent experiences. I know with the psychologists, different tangent, sorry, but they certainly seem to have had. But yeah, interesting.
But on the other hand, Tony, there's also a lot of work going on, I think, behind the scenes, up there, between life states.
Yeah, well, I think in the evolution of
And even
humanity, it's meant to be coming up in for people to be less logical. So they
we
have
can,
to be presented uh, with these theories that maybe makes them listen, or yeah, from credible um, people that they see as credible.
I think there's things happening that we're not meant to understand, or else it would blow our mind. Our puny little brains could not contain. It would
Mm.
just. Matter of fact,
Something happens.
if you ever get a chance, I'd advise, I'd recommend anybody out there to read The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. That's has turned out to be one of my favorite books, at least in this realm. And it's available on Amazon. The Afterlife of Billy Fingers, and it's about this lady's brother. She claims is true. Lady's brother who died. He was a ne'er do well brother and always getting into trouble. And he started communicating with her from the great beyond. But he communicated her in a different way altogether. And so I think you read that book, didn't you, Tony?
I don't know, but I think there was a movie with Brad Pitt in it. I can't remember the context of it, but I know that you talk about it a little bit. So I'm sure it's answers one of the mysteries of life, or has people assimilating with similar experiences.
Hmm.
Ooh. I have a comment here. I'm going to flash it up. Here we go. This is by this is my friend actually. I was going to say indecent, but it actually says indecent. Username. But anyway, what's it say here? Quantum entanglement, I'm understanding, is that thread that Dr. Tony tried to explain to me many years ago. But I'm thinking the way that I explain things is much more as if I were talking to a 6-year-old. But I think what you've presented here today is for the very logical minds, and it's wonderful. Some people really need it in that detail to accept that it's
Well, yeah,
a real thing.
quantum entanglement is probably what the hippies were trying to tell us back in the 60s and 70s, that,
Yeah,
resonate and, in tune with.
yeah.
So it's just another term for that.
Indeed.
Vibes, good vibes, right? Good
Yeah,
vibes.
yeah. See, we could just call it vibes, couldn't we? It'd be so simple.
Yeah.
I have got, I have a few things. I have got a comment by Jim King. Now, Dr. Bruce, I don't know if you know Jim King, but he is this wonderful man who is in his 90s, and he's done a lot of streaming where he calls it talking to his, I call it peeps, but maybe his soul. When he's streaming, he gets this information. So he claims that this is what was told to him. So I thought I would just read it out because he's in the Europe, so it's the middle of the night there, so he's not able to see us live. But I'm sure he may watch it back. And regardless, I'm going to read his comment anyway. So he said this. Although there may be a purpose for any single personality or personal experience, I consider life itself to just be. So that purpose doesn't enter into it. Life is a state of becoming. That's his comment. And most likely very pertinent and simple, much more simple than when we get all discombobulated trying to work out what's it all about. It could be this simple, a state of being or becoming. He also made this comment: consciousness is awareness, and awareness is a reaction to an action. They were talking about they being his stream of consciousness from up there, so his soul. They were talking about the very start of consciousness before anything that we regard as physical had developed. So the evolution of consciousness had a really good start on our universe and was highly developed long before we began evolving as humans. So it's interesting, isn't it? And I'm sure there are many, many people who stream that kind of information that might be of interest to people.
Apparently, that's what Dr. Lanza was trying to tell us too. That
Yeah.
this, uh, consciousness existed, proto consciousness, universal consciousness existed before matter existed.
Yeah. What came first? What came first, the chicken or the egg? Consciousness or yes. So there we go. That's it's been interesting. Oh, I wanted to just have a little plug for my new podcast, if I could. So next week, actually, the next second episode, which is this Friday, I'm doing this podcast live. This Friday, what we're talking about is not consciousness. We're talking about past lives, but actually it's quite energetic because we're going to be talking about how a past life revealed mysterious construction of the pyramids. How'd the pyramids get there? I know that probably everybody on the planet wants to know, and there are many people talking about that now. But anyway, the next podcast we're going to talk about. I have had many people come back with answers from past lives about this, but I'm going to have one of my students on next week to discuss what came. So if you are interested in that, please join us. It will be really exciting. We'll have some pictures of things that she had recalled, and we'll have a big discussion about it, how those pyramids got there. You might be surprised, or you might go, I knew that. We'll see. So just one more thing, that podcast is on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube now, subscribe, and then you'll get a little notification. But that show is every Thursday, 6 p.m. in LA time, which is PST. And in Australia, it happens at Friday, 12 p.m. Brisbane time, 1 p.m. Sydney time. So if you can make it, do check your time zone so that you can make it live, because it's so cool if you can interact with us. So there we go. That's my plug for the new podcast. It's called Awake the Purpose of Life. Love to have you there. And well, from here, Dr. Bruce and I have a new show next week. And what is our topic? Do you remember, Dr. Bruce?
No, I don't. I was
That's
afraid.
okay. I've got it here, and I love this topic. We're going to talk about spontaneous past life memories.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah. And I
yeah,
think,
fun one.
I mean, given that we facilitate past life regression, I think that the spontaneous discussion is going to be super exciting, because particularly recently, I have heard some extraordinarily detailed past lives that came spontaneously to people. And of course, we have our little kids who have spontaneous memories. So that's our discussion next week. What we'd love from you is to join us. And gosh, if you have anything to add, drop it in the comments for particularly next week as well, for these spontaneous past life memories.
Yeah, because what that shows people out there is, oh, I know, I've never had a past life, never had a memory of past life. But when you start delving into the spontaneous memories and you look at them and you show people how, well, this could be a possibility, and this could show an example of spontaneous, and they never thought of it in that vein, then they say, oh, gee, you might be right. So a lot of people,
Absolutely.
yeah, they might have. A lot of people who don't think they have past life memories actually do, above and beyond going through regression.
That's true. I guess we're going to get into that in depth next week, but because there is a paradox in whether people believe it or whether that spontaneous past life absolutely convinces them. So we've got two things that happen. I'm excited to talk about them anyway. And what I'll do for next week is gather some very, very cool stories that people have presented to me from spontaneous recall. So that is our show. Dr. Bruce and Dr. Toni is on Sunday evening, 6 o'clock LA time. And it's Monday, 12 noon, Brisbane time in Australia, 1 p.m. in Sydney. So join us again next week. We'd love to have you. And let me just, before we cut off, or before we say goodbye, there's another little comment. Oh, Indecent said, I explained it to him as a silver thread. You're going to
Shred,
remind me of this.
thanks for that, boy.
Yeah.
You were ahead of your time there, Toni. Thread, shred, flame.
And you are so welcome. And someone said they had a lot of them. I'll assume that they mean spontaneous past life memories. Please come next week and join us. When you comment from Facebook, I can't see your name. So forgive me for not mentioning your name, but you've had a lot of them, and we can't wait to have you next week to discuss with us. Now, and thank you, Indecent. It's great to have you here. Thanks, Elaine. Thank you, everybody. If you would like to have a session with myself or Dr. Bruce, you can go to our websites, Dr. Karlowski, that's drkarlowski.com, and mine's ToniRileyInstitute.com, or you can find us on social media. Namely, you most likely in one of our groups now. And have a regression. It's so amazing. Also, as Dr. Bruce mentioned, he is developing his training, and I have my training already, which you can read all about on ToniRileyInstitute.com as well.
Great training. I sat through it. I think it was last year.
You did.
Yeah, we take two different. We train two different ways, and I think it's great for people to get to even get the experience of different trainings. So I do train now one-on-one, but what I'm developing now is on demand, online on demand. I guess they call them evergreen programs now. Hopefully I'll have that up by end of March, beginning of April. So if anyone wants me to let them know when that's coming down the pike, please, you know how to reach me. You got my, you can reach me through my website, or I think, did we give out the, Toni, did we give out our respective email addresses?
Oh, say your email address, Dr. Bruce.
Okay, well, mine is Dr. Koloski, which is DrKaloski at gmail.com. And we'll
Okay.
put you on the list. We'll let you know when it's
Very.
ready to go, ready to rock and roll.
Okay, and my email list is on that ToniRileyInstitute.com. I'd love you to join it. And gosh, if you do want to email, go ahead, I'll answer. My email is Dr. Tony at ToniRileyInstitute.com. So thanks for joining us and looking forward to seeing you again next week. Tell your friends, bring them, send them a link, get them to these events. And hopefully I'll see you at the Awake the Purpose of Life podcast on Thursday night or Friday in Aussie. So that's it for now.
Okay.
We'll bid you good night and good afternoon.
Good night. Have a wonderful week. See you next week. Bye-bye.
See you next week.